Good morning. Today we're talking about how to measure things, and measuring is extremely important in any baking application, but also in cooking applications where you want to get the same outcome as the person who wrote the recipe. There's a little more leeway in cooking, but in baking you have to be very precise, and people make a lot of mistakes because they don't know the right way to measure or the way that was intended by the author of any professional recipe. So starting with dry ingredients, which is anything loose like flour and sugar and baking soda and baking powder and spices, we're going to look at using our measuring cups and then a scale later on in this demo. So get a good set of measuring cups. Sometimes the novelty sets are a little bit wonky, so I like to stay away from those. Just a standard, basic measuring cup set is good to go. So I'm going to start with the flour, and I'm going to be putting it in a bowl to make our pumpkin muffins. We'll do cream cheese frosting later. So I've got my flour, my scoop, and the correct way to measure is to use a scoop or a spoon to drop the dry ingredient into the measuring cup like that, and you want to overfill it so it's mounded up. And then take something that has a straight side, like a butter knife, the back edge of it, or this scraper, or a spatula, and you want to just scrape off. So I don't really want to be packing anything in. That's going to condense the air between the flour particles out, and you're going to get more flour than you want. So we want to actually spoon in and level off. So I need 1.5 cups. I'm going to go 1, a little tap, and then my half. So what I don't want to do is scoop in with the measuring cup, because that's actually compacting the dry ingredient and going to give you a heavy measure. So instead, if I haven't used the flour in a while, I'm going to just stir it up a little bit to fluff it, and then I'm going to use the scoop to spoon the flour in, overfill it, and scrape it off, just so that it's nice and level. Alright, so that's my 1.5 cups of flour, and I'm going to go for my sugar, also 1.5 cups of sugar in this recipe. If you see in the recipe it says sugar, it just means regular granulated sugar like you would put in your coffee. So 1.5 cups again. So that goes in, level off, add it. 1.5 cups of sugar. Great, so we continue with our dries. But my next dries are so small that my measuring cup set, which goes down to a 1/4 cup, is too big for it. So we use our measuring spoons instead. So if I'm looking at the next one ingredient, we're going to add pumpkin pie spice to this, which is a blend of cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and ground nutmeg. You can buy it already made, or you can Google a recipe for making your own from those individual spices, which I did already. So I need 2.5 teaspoons. So when you look at your measuring spoon set, the biggest one is called a tablespoon, and they're labeled, and then the next size down is a teaspoon, and then there's a 1/2 teaspoon, and this is a 1/4 teaspoon. So I need 2.5 teaspoons. So it's the same principle. I'm going to go in, fluff up my dry ingredient, which is the spice this time, and then overfill it and level off. So that's my 1 teaspoon. I'm going to get my second, leveled off, and then for the half, my 1/2 teaspoon measure is dirty, so I'm just going to do a 1/4 teaspoon twice. So this is where you can apply your fraction knowledge. 2 1/4 teaspoons equals a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 1/2s equals a whole. Alright, so that's my pumpkin pie spice. Baking soda is next. That's my leavener. That's what's going to give the muffins rise, and they just need 1 teaspoon of that. Baking soda can be lumpy, so break up any lumps first. I had some big lumps in there before you measure, and then give it a little fluff, or vice versa. A little fluff and a little breakup. I don't want those lumps to stay in my muffins after they're baked. So, a little fluff. The difference between spoons and cups is with spoons, you really don't have to spoon something into the measuring spoon. It's such a small space that you can do a little scoop and level off with the spoons, but not with the measuring cups. So there's my baking soda. And now salt. Why is there salt in baking sweet recipes? Because it brings out the flavors of everything else. It makes you able to taste them better. So I've just got regular table salt here, or a fine sea salt, but not the big kosher salt. So I've just scooped and leveled. So that's 1/4, a half, and 3/4 of a teaspoon. Yes, that's correct. So that's all of my dry ingredients ready to go. And then you have two options. A lot of recipes, especially like Martha Stewart, will say just whisk them together to combine, or you can sift them together with one of the baking sieves, either the crank kind or the shake kind. I prefer to sift, but whisking is usually sufficient. Unless your baking soda was really lumpy, then you want to go ahead and push it through the sieve to get those lumps broken up. This looks good. So I want it all evenly combined, all my dry ingredients together. And when we come back, we'll do all of our wet ingredients in another container.